artificial intelligence, is it taking over the world? Is it going to make its way into mortgage? What are we going to do with it? That's the burning question that I think everybody wants to get answered. And I have a guest, Andrew Liput. Andrew is the founder and CEO of Secure Insight. But Andrew, you've been spending a lot of time lately talking and writing about AI, and I'm excited to kind of dig into this with you today. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Glad to be back on your program. Yeah, I mean, AI it means a lot of things to a lot of people and gets people excited, and I think it gets people confused. If you ask, three different people what artificial intelligence means,
Yeah.
you might get three different answers, and none of them may make sense to you. So it's something that I think needs to be talked about for many reasons. First of all, because artificial intelligence is the future. It does have positive benefits, which I'm sure we'll be discussing. And when it comes to the mortgage industry, there are significant risks associated with it. So, as any new technology, I mean, we're just starting to learn a lot about its impact and its return on investment. And I hate to use the term because it's used so often, but the jury's still out,
Yeah.
as the lawyer would say, on exactly what it means for mortgage lenders. And unfortunately, when you have a new technology, some people just rush to embrace it, maybe because they feel it's a competitive nature, their peers are using it, so they should be using it. But with most new technologies, I think it's important to slow down, understand what it's all about, make sure that it fits for what you're trying to do. So be happy to get into that more with you.
So before we get into it, I've got a few questions. I've done a lot of catching up and reading on what you've been putting out there. I'm curious where you think we are in the mortgage industry relative to, I'll call it modern AI, because AI has really been around for decades, right? In different, use cases. One could argue that, the automated underwriting systems are some version of AI. There's certainly models and machine learning, but I've been using the baseball reference and kind of telling people I think the mortgage industry is in the first inning, in terms of a baseball game. And I've had people correct me and say, Brian, they haven't even sung the national anthem yet. So I'm curious kind of where you think we are if you put it in.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm a huge baseball fan, so I love that analogy. But I would say, yeah, we're in the first couple innings, and it's just that the game is going very slowly
Yeah,
because, as
no
baseball
pitch
tends to
clock.
do sometimes. Yeah, so exactly. But you're right that AI, again, how do you define what AI is? Maybe we should start there. So I created my own definition. So to me, AI is any technology that is programmed, and that's an important word to remember, to think, create, and produce in ways that are promoted as faster, more efficient, and more productive than humans. So yes, you're right. We've had automated underwriting goes back years. So there have been some technology platforms that have allowed lenders to do things faster and more efficient and maybe more productive than if it was just done by hand. Computers themselves. I mean, I've been in the industry a long time. I remember paper files, right?
Right.
I mean, I remember clients because I've been an attorney also in the mortgage industry for 30 years. One of the issues they would deal with is we've run out of storage space. How long do we have to hold on to these files, right? What's the legal requirements by state or by federal law? Nobody worries about that anymore. Everything's in the cloud and everything's digital. So, the various technology has made life easier, more efficient, more profitable for lenders. But we're talking about now a whole new generation of artificial intelligence. And what we're talking about is a revolution, I think, that is upon us, where the technology is smarter, faster, and can do a lot more things than it used to be in the past. I was just talking to someone from our company today. We actually had a demo set up with a company. And when it came time for the demo, a person didn't come onto the line. It was an agentic AI platform. So if you don't know what an agentic AI is, an agentic AI is basically it's a tool that mimics an individual, right? It's not a real person. We're not talking about organic things here. We're talking about AI. It's always technology. It's always programmed, but it is capable of like autonomous action. So it could take in what it's given and it can learn from it and respond almost like a human being. We've all seen kind of like the agentic AI. You get robocalls, right? You get a call from something, you pick up the phone for the first 10 seconds, you think you're
Right.
talking to a human, and all of a sudden, oh my goodness, this is not a human being. 98% of the time, what happens, people put the phone down, right? So anyway, so the agentic AI is something we're seeing more and more of. So yeah, so that type of thing where really you have technology replacing humans in interaction with other humans, consumer facing, I think that's the real uh, advantage or threat that we're going to start seeing going forward.
Yeah. So before I get into the go into the weeds, so to speak, this is a good place to kind of talk about at an industry, level, and I'll talk a little bit about MISMO, but really how MISMO and the Mortgage Bankers Association, specifically the Residential Board of Governors, RESBOG, um, which makes, I think at any given time, there's 40 or 50 MBA members who are, that sit on that Residential Board of Governors, and RESBOG sets the priority for MBA kind of on an annual basis in terms of what's important, what members and lenders need help with from the association. And the number one priority for this term, for this year's RESBOG committee, is AI. And you and I were talking briefly about this before we hit record, but it's not about like which tools or what processes. It's a level up, if you will. The RESBOG committee really is committed to providing lenders this year with a framework, and the framework would help lenders understand kind of what the guardrails look like for the
Right,
responsible use of AI. And there's a bunch of reasons for why this is important. I would tell you the number one reason is regulatory in nature.
exactly.
It's a little wild west right now from a regulatory perspective on what's in and what's out of AI, as you had kind of opened with, depending on how you define it. So this is a really important topic at the industry level, and your clients obviously are living this every day. So I think this
Yeah.
conversation is going to be useful for them.
Right, and we're seeing the regulators start to respond, right? Just a few weeks ago, Michigan issued a bulletin and regulatory guidance regarding the use of AI in mortgage
Right.
lending. And what did they say they were concerned about? They're concerned about bias in lending, they're concerned about consumer protection, concerned about data privacy and security, and also reminding lenders who may have forgotten that you can't offload or offset liability for compliance and consumer protection simply by outsourcing to a third party vendor. So if you're going to be using AI and that tool is somehow going to result in a biased lending decision, or it's going to mismanage consumer personal non-public information, you're on the hook. And that follows some other states that have issued some regs. New York and California are currently preparing to issue their own guidelines and guidance and regulations regarding AI and its use in technology. So it's very important to be discussing all these things now.
Yeah, and I think just to address Michigan, I'm sitting in the wonderful state of Michigan, so definitely familiar with the update to the reg there. From ResBog's perspective, and we've been talking about this in our existing AI community of practice that is kind of handling this issue with ResBog under the MISMO construct. Set aside AI for a moment. Every lender already is subject to all of the regulations and responsibilities as it relates to fair lending, consumer financial data protection,
Correct.
cybersecurity. Go down the list, right?
Right.
And what our group is kind of working through as we go through this is we don't need another there shouldn't be another regulation on top of a set of regulations that we're already subject to. In this instance, what we're talking about is a set of tools, right, that make up
Right.
AI, and whether I'm using, a tool like a point of sale or a loan origination system or a doc creation platform, I'm still liable for what the output of those tools, creates. And
Correct.
so, uh,
But you're right, and I think the regulation, like if you read Michigan's regulations, there's nothing new in
right,
there. Like I didn't read something and say, "Oh wow, that's a revelation," or that's like something that, really needs to be discussed in detail because it mirrors what's already
that's
existing.
right.
But I think what they're trying to do is just shine a light and bring attention to the fact that artificial intelligence technology platforms are having an impact and will have an impact on lending, and that lenders need to think about it. They need to have oversight. They need to manage those relationships properly because of the fact that AI technology platforms can become autonomous. They're kind of like black boxes, some of them. So you bring it into, your mortgage lending process. Your staff maybe don't even understand it. You don't really understand it. For example, you don't know how they're getting from point A to point B. It's all in the black box. And so, how do you manage that? How do you make sure it's doing the right thing? Because if you put the sausage stuff in and the sausage comes out at the end, and someone takes a bite of that sausage and it's not very pleasant, you got to figure out why, right? And that's a kind of a weird analogy, but I think you get the
Yeah,
point. Is that you need to know what's in the sausage that you're making, and the auditors, when they come in, if they see, let's say they take a look at your records and your reports, and they say, well, we see some disparate impact here. How did you get to these decisions? You can't just say, well, my AI bot, my black box told me to do that. And I think that's what they're basically saying is,
yeah,
in the rush to do this, make sure that you understand exactly how the sausage is made. And the issue with AI is it's not a person, right? It can be programmed to think and create. It can use machine learning, but it's got to be based on something, right? So if it's taking data that's skewed or taking data that is, uh, bad data, it's going to create a bad result, or it could have an unintended result based upon how that information is fed into it and what it's comparing it to. And so I think that the warning is you need to know what's in the sausage.
yeah.
And then if you take it a step further, if you want to talk about the agentic AI, that's the thing that I get really I'm surprised by, because I'm not going to name names, but I know there's some folks out there who are using consumer facing agentic AI for loan origination. I mean, how does that pass the SAFE
It
Act?
doesn't.
It's not a
Yeah,
person, right? And again, you can program something to anticipate or respond to questions. Like, so if you're going to program AI to respond, you say, well, if this, then that. But people are much more complex, and questions are much more nuanced. And it's not unreasonable to understand that you might have a situation where someone asks, a complicated question and gets the wrong answer. And as a result of that answer, now you have a disclosure issue, you have some other kind of compliance issue that's going to not only end up potentially with regulatory issues, but a lawsuit. So, again, that's why we're in the first or second inning, because all these things have to be considered and they have to be planned for. And, it's still early in the game.
yeah. And if you think about the example that could lead to a regulatory issue, right, and or a lawsuit, those are bad, right? But imagine you've sold hundreds, maybe thousands of loans to aggregators, and all it takes is one loan that is discovered, and all of a sudden you've got, a truckload coming back to you in the form of a repurchase.
Right. Well, here's an even bigger one. I think the most critical one is the use of AI in being used for AI dialers and robocalls. You have the TCPA issues there. You have automated systems now with this new technology. They can literally do thousands of calls an hour. much more advanced than anything that existed before. And then you have AI voice agents with minimal human involvement. I personally had a situation where I had like 2 years ago, thought about doing a HELOC. I never went forward with it, but I contacted one lender and then just never did anything.
Right.
Well, my name ended up on a list, and I was getting calls for well over a year from multiple lenders. Well, I assume they were lenders. They never identified what company they were from, but it was an AI voice agent and telling me like I've been pre-approved or been approved for up to X, this rate and everything. And I'm just like, you're not even a person and you're giving me terms of a loan and telling me I'm approved. It eventually stopped. I think someone probably, I didn't have the time, but someone eventually must have complained. But you're talking massive scale. And with the TCPA, with $500 or $1,500 per violation,
Oh,
you can imagine you could have a catastrophic financial exposure if you're using AI for auto dialers or robocalls. I was talking to a group of lenders with the NJMBA the other day, and I posed a scenario. You have AI making 3,000 calls a day. 40% are on the do not call registry because they're not matching
yeah.
them. Where a business relationship is expired, it runs for 5 days. That's 6,000 violations. That's $9 million in potential fines. I mean, who can
Right.
survive that?
Yeah.
Certainly not your, regional mortgage
Yeah.
lender.
You can't originate enough loans and create enough revenue to outrun that. And that's the other thing that, I think as we think about AI getting introduced into our business, the speed at which the speed and scale, to your point, at which if it's wired just a little bit wrong, that little bit wrong could create a lot of exposure and a lot of liability very quickly. And so,
Right.
that-
And I think the other big issue too, again, when you're dealing with consumers, has to do with consent.
yes,
Do you have consent? Do you have written consent? Are there off ramps? Can someone opt out? That's number one. Number two is I think again that consumers are still not at the stage where they readily embrace AI.
right,
I mean, I hear things every day about people, objecting to multi-factor authentication.
yeah,
They don't want to upload their driver's license because they don't trust the technology. Now you're expecting them to interact with an agentic AI loan officer or, receive calls or emails or texts from an AI technology platform that starts asking them questions and delivering information about deadlines and requirements and so on, and you get into consumer harm and maybe UDAP violations, and now you're facing consent orders. So it's a lot to be digested here and a lot to be considered.
yeah. And I think all of this speaks to at the lender level, at the enterprise level, or your vendor processes, policies, and processes have never been more important. For a while, I think we went on autopilot, like check the box when you're doing your vendor reviews. But this is one of those aspects, especially now, there are, I don't know about you, but I'm seeing like dozens of new companies coming into our space, right? They don't have a history in the mortgage industry. And so this is where you have to lean on
They
your,
certainly didn't cut their teeth during, the
that's right.
2005, 2006 period or, the most recent downturn in the industry. So they, you're right, and they don't have that level of experience. And I want to make it clear, though, I'm not against AI
Yeah.
in the mortgage industry. I think there's good solutions out there. I could name a few, that I've seen, like Halcyon, SnapDocs, Gateless, Big POS, but they're more internal focused. So I think that when you're looking at internal focused solutions, how can I do, underwriting faster? How can I get the tax information faster? You know, that I think you have is a lower risk. It's when you start talking about using AI facing consumers, it's going outwards. and you're delivering information, collecting information, then I think you have real concerns there. So, I'm not saying that it's not good, and don't want people like being scared of it. It's just we have to be deliberative, we have to be considerate, we have to really take into consideration all the potential risks, and some risks are higher than others. But certainly the internal use of AI, as I've mentioned, with those companies that I've seen, they have very little risk, and I think that because they have safeguards in place for internal usage, that it
Yeah, and
works.
I would.
But like everything, it's training too. I mean, I hear horror stories out there about loan officers who are putting borrowers' personal information into like Chat
Oh yeah.
GPT, to try to do like calculations and other things. You're dumping personal information into a third party's database. You have no idea where that information is going to be shared, and so on. And so most lenders now have policies prohibiting originators from doing that type of thing. Whether it stops them or not, that's always another question. But
Yeah, and that's always been a challenge for our industry, where you have this distributed sales channel, these local loan originators, and so AI is just the latest tool
right,
that they should be using responsibly, but it's hard to monitor. Like any of us, we have OpenAI app on our phone, and you can't
exactly.
monitor everything. All right, I got one last question for you, Andrew. As we kind of think about you know, moving into the second inning, we'll say, hopefully sooner than later. If you could give our audience one principle to anchor on as they adopt AI, one thing that they should never compromise on, what would that be?
I would say don't compromise on oversight. I think it's very important to have documents of governance right now, even though you're only talking, I think, Colorado, Texas, and Michigan are the only ones who have bulletins out there. But all the state regulators share their information. Get into place right now, have oversight. So get into place separate policies on the governance over the use of AI in all your operations, whether it's loan origination, marketing, secondary market, servicing of loans. Have policies in place. Make sure you train your people as what to expect, so that you're not caught off guard. Because AI is moving very quickly. Technology is moving very quickly. Every day I'm reading about vendors making technology enhancements and using more AI, and it's out there and it's exciting, but you need to be, as I said before, very deliberative in how you approach it.
Love it. That's great. Great advice. It mirrors again, what we've been talking about in this AI community of practice. Andrew, you're a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate all that you do for the industry. I also appreciate your service to our country and the Northeast region, with your participation and role with the Civil Air Patrol of the United States Air Force. I remember going deep
Thank
on
you.
that topic with you a few years back.
Yeah.
Still very.
Yeah, I'm still involved, not as much as before, but it's an honor to serve your community and serve your country, and I've had a pleasure of doing it for well over 15 years, and I'm kind of like in the sunset of my career on that, but I still get involved a little bit. But thanks so
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Well, folks, make sure you tune back in next Friday for our next episode of MISMO Mic'd Up. Andrew, this has been great. I appreciate you coming in. We'll have you back maybe around the fifth inning. What do you think?
That sounds great to me. Thanks,
Thanks,
Brian.
everybody.